Winter. Could this be the best time to start your fig hobby? If you're like a lot of people that like to grow, you're probably saying, next spring, I'm going to start a fig tree. Well, I'm here to tell you that this could be the best time to start a fig tree collection. You see, there are actually two ways to go about this. The first way, usually more economical, and involves getting yourself some fig cuttings and starting those fig cuttings over the winter so that when spring rolls around, they're ready to go outside and start growing properly. Now, as attractive as this may sound, there are a lot of people that struggle with rooting cuttings, while other people find it to be very simple. I do have a video on starting cuttings showing a very simple way to do it. And I have all the materials that are involved, along with many different varieties that are available on my website. I'll leave a link to my rooting cuttings video down in the description in case that's the path you'd like to take. Now, there's a second method to starting your fig collection in the fall or winter, and that involves acquiring a dormant fig tree and storing it in your cold room, wine cellar, or garage during the winter and giving it very minimal care. And I'll explain that to you in a second. And this way, when spring rolls around, you'll have a much more mature tree that will either produce figs that year or produce figs for you the year after, depending on the variety and the size. Okay, so what's involved with taking care of a newly acquired dormant fig tree during the fall or winter? You're actually not going to believe how simple this is. Many people ask me how much sun does it need? Some people ask me how much water or fertilizer does it need? You simply take that tree, you can uppot it if it requires it, and if not, just leave it as is, put it in a cold room, wine cellar, or garage in the dark. The less light, the better. What you're trying to do here is you want to keep the tree dormant. Basically, your tree is sleeping. When it's in this mode, it can take more cold than usual and doesn't need light and doesn't even need water. However, the soil that it's in can't be dry, so it needs to be slightly moist. Now, be careful. Moist does not mean wet. If you're going to keep your fig tree in wet soil all winter long, it may not wake up in the spring. So, like I said, slightly moist soil. What I do is during the winter, once a month, for all my big pots, I put 1 cup of water every first day of the month while they're dormant. I do this to keep the soil moist. If it's in a smaller pot, I may choose half a cup of water. Okay, so depending on the size, you don't have to do anything else. And now, when spring rolls around and you're sure that there's going to be no more freezing, you can take your fig tree and stick it outside if the temperatures are warm during the day. But be careful. If the temperatures go below zero, either during the day or at night, you will have to bring your fig tree back indoors. It can't freeze once it has woken up. This will give your fig tree a beautiful head start and get you eating those delicious figs much sooner. So now that we're through the winter, what are you going to do in the spring? Well, once your fig tree begins feeling that spring warmth, it's going to start putting out leaves and may even start popping out some breba figs, depending on what variety of fig tree you have. What I like to do here is give it water and I like to start my figs on a fertilizer program, and I have a complete video on that. If you're the kind of person that wants to pamper your fig tree and pump it to its maximum potential so that you can get lots of figs from it. However, if you're just looking for a very simple fertilizing method, I can tell you really quickly that if you live in a cold area like mine, what you're going to do is use some sort of high nitrogen fertilizer, let's say Miracle Grow All Purpose, and cut that down to half strength. So use only half the amount of fertilizer that they say per the amount of water that they say. So if they say use, 30 mil for 6 liters of water, I use 15 mil for 6 liters of water. And I only do that for the first maybe 3 or 4 weeks, depending on how early my spring showed up. And then after that, I switch to a more balanced fertilizer, like a tomato fertilizer. So something like, again, Miracle Grow Tomato this time, or any other fertilizer that's balanced. Again, I have a whole video on fertilizing fig trees, and I will leave a link to that as well down below, and you could feel free to watch it and grab all the details from it. Now, during the summer, you're going to start getting your figs, and my advice to you is to be a little patient when those figs start forming. Don't pick them off the tree yet. What you're looking for is a very soft, mushy fig. Unlike a lot of fruits, figs taste the best when they are fully ripe. Your fig needs to be soft, even at the top of the stem. Not have any dripping white latex when you pick it off. And a lot of times with a lot of figs, you get some honey oozing out of the eye of the fig. And that is what makes enjoying figs from your own tree much better than any store-bought fig you could find. And this, you'll find, as many other fig growers do, can be one of the most difficult things about growing figs, is staring at that fig for all that time and having to wait and even worry that some animal or bird might damage it while you wait for it to be perfect. And this is where my organza bags come in. Once I see my fig beginning to ripen, I like to put an organza bag around it. It still won't protect you against some of the bigger critters, but for the most part, it does make a big difference. All right, that brings us almost full circle, right back to the fall. And this is where the cold starts setting in, and maybe some rain. And again, if you live in a cooler climate like mine, this is where you may want to start bringing in your fig trees into the garage during the night, because you'll most likely have more figs on the tree that haven't ripened yet. And the colder it gets outside, the slower the ripening process will be, and the less tasty your figs will be. So they will lose some of the quality and the taste and appearance. And as it gets rainy and cold, they'll get worse and worse. This, again, is a quality where some varieties of figs do better than others. Finally, when things get too cold and you begin to see the leaves on your fig tree changing color, maybe a frost happened overnight, and you'll most likely start seeing your leaves falling off. And before you ask, yes, it's okay to get a frost on your fig trees late in the fall or early winter. That's what actually tells your tree that it's time to go dormant. And it won't harm it as long as the temperatures are not way too cold. You may see some damage if you have new, tender green growth. But other than that, your fig tree will be fine. Okay, so your fig tree is now dormant. And what you want to do is, if you have any leftover leaves or figs, as hard as it is, pop those figs off, remove those leaves, and get your fig tree ready for storage. So, even though it's the fall or winter, this may be the ideal time for you to get your fig tree collection started. I have many videos on my channel that go through many guides, and because I'm located in a north cold climate, I have many tips that could benefit you. Please join my channel, share the video, and leave me any comments or questions that you have. I'm RK Figs, and we'll see you next time. Stay warm, everybody.